Hello and welcome to this edition of the Hockey Talk podcast. I'm Matthew Harding. On May 26th, the National Hockey League announced a return-to-play plan that ended the 2019-20 NHL regular season and set the table for the 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs that could begin later this summer. On this edition of the podcast, I chat with the former host of NHL Tonight, a staple of ESPN's NHL coverage, and the voice of the NCAA Frozen Four, John Buccigross. We also discuss the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, his perspective as the sports world came to a pause, golf, and colleges cutting sports. Here's my conversation with ESPN's John Buccigross. John, first question for you. First of all, thanks for doing this. How are you and the family doing through all of this?
Doing well. Just wish I could go to the gym and do some bench pressing. Other than that, it's not much difference, but I missed going to the gym. Good for the mental health, good for the energy. So I definitely missed that. Other than that, everything is well. How's
the golf game going these days?
Golf game's great. It's all I do. I realized all these years recently when my game hasn't been very good. I realized the answer was I probably wasn't playing enough or practicing. So it's been a nice outlet for sure to have that, to have the exercise, to make that nice 5-6 mile walk in between shots, and so it's been really therapeutic and really good. So I've kind of recaptured the joy of the game after fixing some things, and hopefully I can enjoy those times with friends and new friends. And it's a great social game, great exercise, great to be outside getting that important vitamin D that we all need, and so yeah, it's been a good spring.
What's the success that you found in your game as you've played here this spring?
A lot of it was just taking the tension out of my game. I was too tense, especially out of dress, worrying about a few things that could happen. And I just kind of came up with a new pre-shot routine where I really don't put my left hand on the club until the last second. Kind of hold it with just my right hand to look at the target, and then softly put my left hand on the grip, my top hand, I'm right-handed, and then just go. So it's I think it's taking out tension and also having a trigger. When you're over the ball, you're not sure when to go back. And sometimes it might be 4 seconds, sometimes it might be 9, and you're squeezing tighter, and the shoulders are getting tighter, and your traps are getting tighter. And then tension is the enemy for most of life, whether it be a physical activity or a mental activity, or whether you used to start a business or how you run a business or how you conduct yourself. It's a lot about no tension, letting go. So just by putting that left hand, I just experimented on the range the other day, and it just changed my entire game. Literally in seconds. It just it did that. So I'm going to keep that routine for now, and hopefully as long as I need to. And you'd think at some point I could hold the club gently, and just like a normal golfer, but I'll keep doing this because it brings me joy to hit those nice drives.
That's awesome. What are you shooting these days?
I had a nice little 1/73 yesterday. It was nice. I 3-putted 17. It was even par. So I had to go to the last with a birdie, and actually had like a 15-foot birdie putt to shoot a 72, which was, I thought it was in me, and I thought it was in there. But like I said, I've been struggling with 81, 81, 80, 81, 81, 80, and occasionally a 78 here or there. But like I said, since I made that little move on Sunday, and then even the first few rounds, I still wasn't scoring, but I knew I was hitting the ball better. I knew it was only a matter of time. And then yesterday, shot a little 35 on the front, made a couple back-to-back bogeys, but then I got a chip-in birdie on 15 and got back to even. That's fun as a golfer. You like to have those rounds down the stretch where you're shooting a good score, or anyone who's trying to break 80 for the first time or 90 for the first time. You like to be in it with 5-6 holes to go. You just don't like to make the turn and realize, well, there's not really a lot to play for here. I'm not going to shoot a great score today. And so that was a good feeling to have that again. It's going to turn into a golf podcast pretty soon here.
Pretty much. Well, let's get away from the golf and kind of talk about how life at the mothership has changed since coronavirus came down. What's the workload like for you these days, and how is life at the mothership?
Well, it's always been a great company to work for. I've always been very grateful to work for Walt Disney and at ESPN, and certainly this is no different. My job, certainly when we get to work, there's not as many people there, only a few hundred at a time. People are obviously wearing masks going around until we appear on camera, and then we take them off then. But so it is a little eerie. It is a bit like a ghost town, and it's a giant, beautiful campus. We call it a campus because it's much like a college campus. 15, 16 buildings, a small college campus. I think there's around 3,000 to 4,000 to 5,000 people who generally work at ESPN at a time throughout the course of a day. So it's like a nice little D2, big D3, smallish D2 college, and it's a beautiful place to work. They've done a great job with the grounds, and so yeah, it is a little eerie not to hear that bounce. To see games on, you hear these cheers, these explosions of cheers sometimes when a big shot is made, and you wonder what channel is that? What channel is that? What happened? When you have all these games on at the same time, or sometimes one big game on and most people are watching the same game. And I've always said it's like a sports bar without the beer at ESPN. It's fun. A lot of sports fans watching games. So that's been a little bit different. Just really go in every couple weeks for a couple days at a time. And because Los Angeles is not doing anything, so we're kind of picking up their late shift, the show that re-airs all night long. So but there's obviously not need for as many sports centers, and so we kind of rotate and not work as much, spaced out in between, and just waiting hopefully for things to return. Overall, the shows have been good. I've enjoyed doing the shows, even though there hasn't been highlights per se like we normally have. I think we've done a good job filling the show with some news items, some content, some fun things, some historical top 10 lists and things. So overall, I've enjoyed going into work and look forward to.
March 11th and 12th will probably go down as the most surreal days in sports history. What were those 2 days like from your perspective?
Yeah, it was weird. I was kind of watching TV that night. I was off that night, and that's certainly when Rudy Gobert tested positive. That was kind of the huge tipping point. Certainly there were things happening. Even earlier that day, I remember tweeting out before that night saying, I just don't think we're going to be playing sports. I just had a sense that they were going to things were going to go away kind of quickly. And then when Gobert hit, that was kind of a tipping point that everyone kind of reacted emotionally to it. And then that kind of reacted in many things, even though a positive test isn't anything to go crazy about, especially for a young, healthy man like him. He was fine. A few of those NBA players had no symptoms and they were fine. But, I understand a lot of people in those situations do tend to, they do, and sometimes panic. They react emotionally. They don't look at perhaps all the information. That's how they react. It's fight or flight, and people get a little scared and they want to protect themselves and protect others. And so that was a moment in time for sure. And even soon after that drive into ESPN, it did kind of remind me of 9/11. Driving through downtown Hartford with no traffic. You could clearly feel and see fewer cars on the road, fewer people out and about. So you not only, had your life changed, you could really sense your environment was different. And it was, and something had happened to cause that. And it did remind me of that.
There was some frustration initially with Rudy Gobert. He was touching all the microphones and the recorders and things like that. Initially in the NBA, there was some frustration about that. But are we going to look back in 25, 30, 40, 50 years and say the Rudy Gobert positive test was really what opened up this nation's eyes to coronavirus, and we look at Rudy Gobert as a kind of as the martyr in this situation as opposed to a negative figure? Yeah,
it's always it seems strange to me that some people feel like they have to issue a press release when they test positive, as if it's or they have to or feel defensive about it. It's a virus. Any of us could get it at any time, and thankfully most of us will be fine. A very, very, very high percentage will be fine. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's not anything anyone did because of their behavior. It's there. Viruses are there. They've always been there. Our bodies thankfully can deal with them. Usually for a lot of people, some people are very susceptible to them, and it's an everyday occurrence for them for the rest of their lives. They have to be careful for things and like that. So, it struck me as, although certainly in let's face it, much of the world, really, not just people blame the United States sometimes, or kind of infatuated with celebrity and the celebrity culture, and that's true all over the world. We see it in Japan, we see it everywhere that people just like famous people, and they go nuts sometimes for famous people. So yeah, so when a famous person gets it, whether it's Tom Hanks or a professional athlete who is the epitome of young and healthy. But again, this is a virus. It can hit anybody. It's not going to, it doesn't matter how healthy you are. That it matters, what your body's going to react to that virus. If you're young and healthy, you're going to be, in 99% fine. Obviously, it's protecting everybody else that we need to do. So I think, overall, I don't know if, and obviously him touching the microphones, I think we have to give him a break on that. No one saw this coming. No one realized. A lot of people were probably ignorant on how any virus works, how the normal flu virus works, how contagious it is, what you can do. Like I've always washed my hands. I've always kind of to a fault, not quite Howie Mandel germaphobe, but like I've always been conscious of, I wash my hands. I've touched a lot of people here. I'm going to cover my sneeze. I'm going to kind of give a little social distancing. It just seems like it was a natural kind of thing to do in certain situations. So, hopefully we learn from it, get educated from it. Maybe we'll probably see more people wear masks during every cold and flu season, especially in places like New York City, because clearly, that probably can give you a margin for error. I always tell my kids, life's about a margin for error. You do the best you can. If you're down the highway, stay away from speeding cars. If you get by a truck, get by the truck quickly or hang back. Don't hang around that giant tractor trailer. He might not be able to see you. Anything can happen anytime. So just create a margin for error the best you can. There's no guarantees in life. Anything can happen any day. Grateful for every day, but just do the best you can to give yourself just a little margin for error.
Let's shift to the ice, and the NHL season paused in mid-March as well, and there were a lot of intriguing storylines heading into that coronavirus shutdown. What were some of those storylines that you were following?
Yeah, the season was just about over. Where the regular season was just about ending. So, and you look forward to that. Once you get to the 10, 11 games left in the season, for the NHL, it's time to go. Let's go. Let's start the playoffs. Let's start the tournament. Let's see what happens. And, can the Blues repeat? Can the Bruins get back? Would we have a rematch? I certainly think the odds are still that we could have a rematch in the Stanley Cup final. Could this finally be the year Tampa Bay gets that cup? They're coming up on salary cap Armageddon. This is pretty much it for them. They got to do it. The first round sweep last year to Columbus, they were starting to hit their peak there at that time, so maybe they were going to come through. The West was kind of muddled, but in the East, it was like, could Ovi get his second? The Penguins are kind of in the weeds. Then you kind of had the Bruins and the Lightning with the big two, and then the Capitals probably the big three. I could see any of those three winning. Then it was just a matter, could the Penguins sneak in there if they got the right matchups and got hot? And the West, like I said, I still think St. Louis is the favorite. Vegas certainly has loaded up their roster, could make a run any time. And like we saw the Blues last year, any team could make that run at any time. So all 16 would have a chance, and now it's 24. And so, it was that time when you just kind of want the regular season to end and get the tournament underway.
John Buccigross from ESPN joining us here on the Hockey Talk podcast. The plan came out, the return to play plan from the NHL on Tuesday. Now a 24-team NHL playoff field when we resume action, presumably no earlier than mid-July. Your thoughts on that plan, and is that the right number? Is 24 the right feel for the right number of teams?
I think so. I think, people like to watch real meaningful sporting events. That's why fights are always big and intense, because they're usually for a championship, and there can be multiple. They don't have to wait all year for the one championship game that we have in team sports. We have multiple championship fights in UFC and boxing, and that just creates a lot of emotion and excitement. And so anytime you can create more meaningful games, whether it be a tournament game, like of course in colleges we have conference tournament games and big regular season conference tournament and league games, and that helps. It just amps up where the professional sports model, and you wonder over time if they'll have to reset this, is have these long, drawn-out regular seasons before you get to the meaningful games. And so whether it's creating more meaningful games or creating more teams to get into those meaningful games, like what we're doing with these 24 teams, it's just going to increase interest in those extra 8 cities. And those teams are going to be, those fans are going to be really into those games because they mean something. It's not a end of the season, regular season game. It's a real game to continue your season into these playoffs. And certainly when there are bigger markets involved, like a Chicago, that's only good for interest, only good for business. This is a business trying to create revenue for the owners and for the players. They're the ones who profit from this. Us fans, we don't profit from it. We lose money in the deal, whether we're consuming merchandise, going to games, buying games, or betting. So we're the losers in all this. So their job is to, ultimately to create revenue for themselves, for the owners and for the players. And so the more meaningful games, the more teams you have in there, I think it's just a logical thing to do.
With no fans in these arenas in the two hub cities, how do you think that will impact the team on the ice in terms of feeding off of the energy or just the excitement of the game? And then the other thing I would want to ask is, how do you think that will translate to the fan watching at home?
Yeah, that's really an interesting dynamic to ponder. I asked one NHL coach, could it help a team like Toronto who won't feel the pressure of being home, unless Toronto's a hub city? But like you said, you won't feel the angst of the fan in an empty arena. And also, if they're playing a veteran team like the Bruins, could the Maple Leafs feel also not intimidated on the road a little bit? Because a young player can definitely feel just that gigantic aura of a different type of intensity early in his career could possibly affect them. Ultimately, it's a talent game, and the most talent will win. And experienced talent will win. But I just wondered, I wondered to him if he thought maybe, and he didn't really think so. But I just wondered if a team like the Maple Leafs could benefit from something like this, a young, talented team, or like a Colorado, who could just go out there and fly. I talked to another NHL coach who said that he says once it gets going, the players' dilemma, or the players' factor of playing in an empty arena, he feels it'll be, once the game starts, they're pretty much who they are, what they are. The game will look the same and feel the same a lot to them. People watching at home, from that other angle of the question you asked, luckily hockey's a loud sport. We have blades on ice. We have pucks splashing against boards and glass and checks and equipment. So we have a multitude of sounds. It's one reason why I only went to one outdoor game, and I'll never go to another one as a fan, because you can't hear the game in an outdoor game when you're in a football stadium. That's one of the best parts of the tape-to-tape pass inside an arena is just a wonderful thing, that crisp bang, bang, from one stick to the other. So luckily, hockey has a multitude of sounds, and it's noisy throughout, where basketball is squeak, 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 swish, bang, squeak, 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 a little bit of that. And so, yeah, I think in that way, hockey is luckier than soccer, too. Soccer's, played on grass, and it's not a lot of noise. But hockey's a loud sport, so I think that'll help it.
What are some of the things that you're hearing from players, executives, and coaches that they're maybe some pitfalls, I guess, as they get ready to return? I watched your interview with Scott Van Pelt the other night, and you'd mentioned that James Van Riemsdyk hadn't skated in 10 weeks, and now we're going to be asking them to privately work out and do it in small groups as we start to ramp back up. So do you see that, the layoff, as being kind of a hindrance to the quality of the product here as we get underway?
Yeah, those 10 weeks was the longest he hadn't skated in his life. And but again, these are high-conditioned young men who are obviously at the top of their athletic column here. So it won't take long once they start skating on their own, like you said, in small groups, getting those muscles. They'll be sore for a while for sure, and they might. And obviously, the fear is always groin and hip issues with skaters to push off awkwardly and it's an inexact stride every time you're on the ice. One stride could kind of give way a little bit. You could kind of strain it. And so that's always the fear. But if they start slowly and you slowly amp up to 4 weeks, that seems like about right. And it looks like now it's going to be more like maybe 6, but which is probably good. Just to start slowly, build up those muscles, get sore, and then heal. And then hopefully by the time you hit, you're ready to go in 6 weeks. But again, it's a young league. It's made up mostly of young, very good athletes who are now conditioned 12 months out of the year, not back in You couldn't do this 20, 30, 40 years ago, certainly, when guys just didn't skate in the summer. They showed up at training camp in September and then went from there. Now these guys are really, CrossFit level athletes. They're shredded, they're great conditioned, and they enjoy that 12-month process. And so it does not take, they've had lockouts to come back from where they prepared, the season's on. They find out at a moment's notice. You never know when a labor negotiation is going to be settled. And so once it is, it's like, okay, here we go. Here's the plan. So they've had a couple of those, especially the longer veterans. They've had to deal with that a couple times. So they're very, very pliable. And I think that's the least of the problems, is actually playing.
Spending our final few moments here with John Buccigross from ESPN. Do you think that this playoff format that we're going to enter into immediately, or by the later this summer anyway, not immediately, but do you think that this playoff format is something that we could see perhaps down the road as a fixture?
I just like I talked about before, they need to come up with, outside of football's, whether by luck or whatever, it was the perfect sport to always do well and thrive and grow and be massive and become the most popular. Once a week for build-up. Every game is big because there's only 16 in the NFL, even college more like 12. So every game is big. It's a big event. You get a huge amount of TV revenue where you don't have to play more games to create the revenue where the other sports do. So it's just a perfect sport that way. The other sports, hockey, basketball, baseball, I do think they need to come up with different ideas to have these long, drawn-out seasons. And then the most important, biggest part of the season is only 2 months long. And when it's that stark, when it becomes that, you got to figure something else out. Have a first half winner, have a second half winner. We're playing 30 games here, and the top 2 teams in each division get a postseason berth. Then we have a new season, and then we have another little mini seasons with these big tournaments, or even have a division round robin tournament in December in the middle of the season. That team's going to get a bonus 5 points or something in the standings. Anything to create a little more tension and urgency. I think you're going to see all sports at least look at that, and that's what these strange and times enable teams to do and leagues to do, is experiment. So many people are so conservative; they're afraid to try things. I always say, just try something. If it doesn't work, change it back. Whatever, whether it's a law, whether it's a rule, whether it's whether it's a playoff format, let's just try it. Let's give it a shot. If upon further, especially with sports, because there's no big penalty, there's no big, there's no big problem if it doesn't work. It's only sports, so we can change it back. Let's give it a shot. Why don't we try it this way? Let's try it this way this year. And so, part of it was, I was thinking this morning, is people are so attached to records in some sport, where we can't change the amount of games or the whole format, because then Gretzky's record doesn't mean as much, or this record doesn't mean as much. And that's what's, again, back to football, they're a great gift. They don't care about records. They don't really care who the all-time leading rusher is. It doesn't affect Walter Payton's legacy or Dan Marino's. They're just numbers. Other sports are so tied to them in a way that I think it creates a crutch and a hindrance to creating the best in each sport, like football does with drama. And so I think, yes, the other sports need to somehow, how can we increase more drama throughout the year and not wait for these long, drawn-out regular seasons?
We're going to get play underway presumably in August, and then award a cup in late September, perhaps early October. What does that do to the 2021 NHL season? Because we're down here in the American Hockey League, ECHL, and Southern Pro League, they're trying to figure out how to start their seasons. Do they start them on time in October, or do they wait for the NHL? What's the sense that you're getting up there as to how this playoff format and where we're going with that will affect the NHL season for 2020-21?
Yeah, I think for sure, because it just makes so much sense. It's usually prevails, not always, but to me, most things in life, you look at something and says, this is the right thing to do. Okay, this makes sense. And that's how we should make all our decisions based on that. This is smart. Let's do this. And I think that's a January 1st Winter Classic kickoff to the season. That makes the most sense. Maybe you have a training camp starting in December. The guys have to have 2-3 months off, like you said. And so let's start the training camp maybe early December, 3 weeks, get into it, take 4 days off for Christmas. Everyone goes home, come back for one more week, and then we have a Winter Classic game to kick off the season, and here we go. And that probably makes the most sense from a calendar. I think minor league hockey that you touched on, I'm glad you did, that they should start at the normal time. They should begin their season like they always have. Now, how that works contractually with the NHL and all that and everything, I don't, that minutia I'm not sure. But I don't see why all these leagues just can't start up again in October, or maybe even earlier if they want for this year. If hockey's going to start later, why don't you just start NHL right after the Stanley Cup? Start the regular season for the minor league hockey, and then they can finish when they normally do, and they might even be ready to help out the NHL teams in the playoffs if they feel that's necessary. But yeah, that's how I would do it. NHL with a Winter Classic kickoff. Figure out how many games you want to play next year. You're going to try to get all 82 in. Again, I'm sure the owners want their revenue. I'm sure the players want their full salary. So I understand that. So maybe they take it into July after they've seen, hey, we can't play hockey in August. I've often thought of, should hockey flip their entire season? I've thought about this last few years, to play in the summer and be off during football season. I've always thought about that. Why would you go, will it not matter? Will it be worse because it is in the summer and people are, but will they like going to a cool rink in the hot summer? So maybe they'll do even better. Like I said, you really don't know until you try something. And why not be more bold when you're talking sports? We can't be bold in some things because the circumstances could be too dire. But for sports, we can try things. We can really be creative, give it a shot, and see how it goes. And if it doesn't work out, change it back. It's not that difficult. So sometimes when they're forced into it like now, this could create a whole new paradigm of sports from a viewer standpoint, from a seasonal standpoint, that wouldn't have happened. So, it's going to take time to see this. Like everything, it's going to take time to play out, to watch, to examine, to talk about, and to look at numbers and look at data, and then you make it. And then from there, you hopefully make another good decision. So it's going to be a very interesting time for the sports calendar and how that affects future decisions and future calendars.
I want to switch to the other subject that is near and dear to your heart, and that is college hockey. The UAH hockey program is on the chopping block as a result of COVID-19 related cuts. What are your thoughts on that? And then do you think that this could be a larger sign of trouble for college hockey, especially in D2 and D3?
Well, my thoughts for universities and colleges cutting sports programs is a total lack of courage and just an absolute awful reaction to a situation that young people had nothing to do with. And for them to pay the price for these schools that have huge endowments, many of them, a guy running track at Brown is there for 2 years, on his way to a great degree at Brown. He's on the track team, creating these amazing bonds and memories with friends. He's trying to improve himself. Trying to improve his time, trying to improve his discipline, trying to be healthy, trying to get stronger, trying to come up with a regimen to perform this task, which then you transform over into the rest of your life. And suddenly he can't run track anymore, or he's got to go somewhere else. He doesn't want to leave Brown. Brown's a great degree. He's invested 2 years of friendships and emotion and time and credits, and now he can't run track anymore? It's like Brown doesn't have a big enough endowment to fund a track team for a year. Now you obviously Alabama, Huntsville, and maybe some other places, that's different. Hockey is very, very expensive. You need some revenue. You need a commitment, especially in a place like that. If you're not going to get huge numbers or have a huge revenue sport elsewhere at the college, to make it happen. I understand at some point the numbers is too big for hockey. So you try to rally together, which they're trying to do there. You're trying to get a couple big alums to write big checks. You start this GoFundMe. Can you give us a year? If we raise $1 million, can you give us one more year to come up with a plan to get systematic, consistent donations Also build the program up to get involved with the community more, maybe get more season tickets, go to business people, try to get the season ticket number up, try to create some revenue. Look at, Penn State came into college hockey, and in their second year, they were a profitable sport. Football was the only other profitable sport at Penn State. Two sports make money at Penn State. Now recently basketball has, they've joined them. But at the time, it's hockey and football. That was it. Only two sports that make money. We know that. Most sports are going to lose money at schools, but that's why kids pay tuition. A lot of schools only exist because they have an athletic department, especially a lot of small schools, D3 schools. They wouldn't exist without sports. And so they're important. So you will see what happens with Alabama Huntsville. But again, hockey is a very expensive sport, and you need planning, you need support from the administration, and you need to be really smart and committed about it. It takes a lot of commitment. It takes commitment just to play hockey from the early ages. When you're 4 years old, it takes a commitment from parents and the kid to get up that early, to put on skates, to go to a freezing rink, to write $300 a month for about 4 months, to pay for most youth hockey programs, local youth hockey programs, $1,200-$1,400. It's like an extra car payment. You got to drive him to the rink. Sparky's got to get up at 6 a.m. He's got to put in those. He's going to fall down a lot. It's a hard game to play. Hockey's always filled with challenges, right from the age of 4 on. And so this is another challenge. So if you're going to play hockey, if you're going to be involved in hockey as a parent, if you're going to be involved in hockey as an institution, you've got to be all in. It's not halfway. It's not one of those halfway. It's why I love the sport. I like those difficult things. It's like you got to be all in. You got to be committed. And in the end, that still might not be enough, but that's step one. And so getting committed, having a long-range plan, really working at this, that's what Alabama Huntsville is going to have to do. And we'll see if they get this 1-year life preserver, and then they're able to come up with that 10-year plan or so to raise money, get donations, and keep this thing, and get some momentum. Life's about momentum. Athletics is about momentum. You just go, let's have a good day. Let's have another good day. Just try to create some momentum, and that's where improvement and stability and stuff like that comes from.
And that's a evolving hockey hotbed, because you have the back-to-back SPHL champions there in the Havoc, and you have the Nashville Predators right up the road there. So hopefully they can get it turned around there for sure. And I completely agree with you that if you're taking sports off the table, it's a cop-out for people who have, because these kids had nothing to do with it. That's
a good word. Cop-out's a good word by you to use. You're right. We want our kids to be engaged. We want them to have something to improve towards, to go to the gym, to eat well, to be healthy. That's what, I always wanted my kids to play sports growing up, not to win games when they were 9. I want them to be healthy, to get strong legs, to get strong cores, to have a strong immune system, to want to get better, then want to get better at school, and then want to read books, and want to get better at playing the guitar, want to get better at whatever you do. And that's what sports does. And just to cancel these sports, what do they think the consequences are going to be? Just, just these kids emotionally, you're just cutting them off halfway through their college careers. Like I said, a kid who runs track at Brown, or a kid that plays golf at Akron, his whole life and it has been gearing up to that point that he makes the commitment. He writes you these big checks. Some of them are scholarships, some of them are not. And then suddenly it's done. It's over. It's like, with all these huge endowments, some of these universities, even the smallest of these universities, these podunk universities in the Midwest have $20-30 million stashed away. They certainly can keep a track team going for a semester, or a golf team. Figure it out. Yeah. But geez, you don't penalize the kids who have nothing to do with this.
Absolutely. One final question for you here as we wrap up the interview. What role do you feel like sports will have in healing our country from this pandemic? Sports and baseball played a huge role in 9/11, in the healing process after that. Surely sports will play another role in this healing process from coronavirus.
Probably a couple things. One might be obtuse, but the big thing is, one of the worst things we can do, and I fall prey to it sometimes, is isolating myself. I've been divorced for 4 years. My kids are grown. I'm by myself a lot. and living out in rural Connecticut doesn't help. But and that's not great for us to kind of be alone a lot. Connections are important. Being with people and feeling that the love and the joy and the laughter and the exercise, like in a round of golf or any type of activity like that. It's just important for us. We need it. It's good for us. It makes us happier. And then when we're happier, then we can help other people more. That's the whole idea, is to, sacrifice. We learn that in hockey. That's why I love the sport so much. It's about heart. It's about courage. It's about sacrifice. And so what sports does, it brings people together from being isolated. That's what the danger of this time is. The danger of a lockdown is that you're isolating people and you're taking them away. And that's not good for any of us in multiple ways. In sports, that's what it does. It brings us together, especially when we watch a live sporting event. We can do that by ourselves, but we're still connected with people. And that's what The Last Dance kind of did on ESPN. Is a lot of people are watching that show at the same time. We tend to watch things when we want to watch them when we stream. When I was a kid, we all watched, these Cheers or Happy Days or Seinfeld all at the same time. You could kind of feel that. And that's what sports is, the last part of TV that does that, because you have to watch them live. So we feel connected. And so that's the big thing, is just feeling connected with fellow humans, fellow Americans, fellow countrymen watching a sporting event. And then I think the other part is health, is that we need to be healthier. The healthier we are, the better chance we are against a virus. And that's eating better, and it's exercising, and it's, hygiene, washing your hands or whatever. But that's a big thing, and that we need to be healthier. We need to eat better, and that it's not a guarantee. Like I was going back, it's a margin for error. But it gives you a better chance to fend off viruses, to be healthy, and so we can help each other and be connected. So that's the big thing to me, the importance of health. It's something I've always, I say one of the most important things you can do as a parent is have your kids eat good food and be healthy. That's like your number one job, is to protect them, what they eat, and be safe, and then educate them. That's a big one though, when you get right down to it. So I hope we connect. I hope we stay connected. I hope we really work on being connected via sports, and then also the health factor of these young healthy people. That's the way you want to strive. We're not going to reach that peak level they have, but it's the way to live the best you can, is by being healthy, not only to deal with viruses, but really everyday life, whether it be just dealing with life, being healthy, feeling good about yourself. We can't avoid accidents. We can't avoid those things that happen. At least we give ourselves the best shot.
One of the best follows on Twitter, at ButchieMaine, John Buccigross. Thanks very much for doing this, man. Be well, and let's do this again as we get through the NHL playoffs and steamroll toward next season. All right.
Anytime. It was a pleasure talking with you. Honored to be with you, and I would do it anytime.
Our thanks to John for joining us, ESPN PR representative Andy Hall for helping set up the interview, and most importantly to you for listening. I'll be back next week with another edition of the Hockey Talk podcast.